Where's my wife? I shifted her. What do you want with me?
Welcome to Rhythm and Roads. I'm your host, Joshua Jacob. We have a very special guest. We have Brock Heasley, the director of The Shift that releases out nationwide tomorrow, December 1st. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joshua. Appreciate it.
The actors, the story, I just was like lost in it. I was lost in a good way, as in like, wow, this movie's great. I love film as well as a filmmaker, but just seeing everything you've done with the actors and just the scenes, it was just great. So good job
I
on that.
appreciate
Good
that.
job. Yes, sir.
Thank you, man.
So I am interested. How did you become a filmmaker? How did you start in that?
Well, about 9 years ago, my wife and I both lost our jobs within 24 hours of each other. And
Wow,
I
24 hours.
had, yeah, it was a heck of a thing. And
Oh
I
man.
was coming off of a 15-year career as a graphic designer and art director, and never once thought I would ever get into the film industry.
Wow.
But after a few months of just coming up dry with getting a new job
Mhm.
and interviewing in my field, after a lot of prayer, my wife and I both came to the same conclusion, which was that I should jump into the film industry, which was crazy and promised absolutely no money up front,
Oh,
which wasn't great for our mortgage and wasn't great for our three girls. But somehow we made it through years of unemployment as I learned how to make movies and did all kinds of crazy little things and
wow.
made this crazy little short film called The Shift that turned out a little bit better than expected. And when Angel Studios saw it, they said, let us help you turn this into a movie." And so here we are,
Oh, wow.
9 years
Okay.
later, and it's coming out.
So oh wow, that's incredible. So you're telling me that this shift was from based on the short little project you did back then?
Yeah. In 2015, I shot a 20-minute short film
Oh my
about a
God.
guy having a
Yeah,
confrontation with the devil in a diner, and just
that is
really just to
cool.
see if I could write and direct. And it turned out I could, and based on that, was able to get crowdfunded investment
Mhm.
through Angel Studios. 6,000 people came in based on that
Oh
short
wow.
film and said, "We want you to turn this into a feature film."
That's awesome. That's incredible. And just to see how God used something from such a disappointment of losing a job, but from, like they
Wow.
say, when one door closes, a better one opens, and how that just changed everything where God knew he knew your purpose of what he has for you in life, but for you to go through that, it was like, okay, God, you're up to something. And how he
Yeah,
just changed it
yeah.
like that to put you on the path of your dream, your goals, the passion that you're doing now. That's an amazing story.
No, 100%. And for me, it was a very Job-like story. And it's no
Oh,
coincidence that
yeah.
this movie is inspired by the book of Job. If you're familiar at all with the book of Job,
Yes.
you'll see some familiar beats in this film. Yeah, to be honest, a lot of that was just taken from what I was experiencing at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so it's inspired by Job, but I mean it's also inspired by your what you went through. But what made you pick Job? Other out of like Moses and other stories from the Bible, you know?
Well, at the end of the short film, the short film was conceived as a story unto itself. I didn't really see, I saw it as a Lost Twilight Zone episode, so I didn't
Oh,
really
okay.
necessarily feel the need to continue the story. But at
Oh,
the end
okay.
of that short film, which is really kind of the first act of the feature film now, at
Okay.
the end of that short film, our protagonist, Kevin, he has this profound experience where he realizes the reality of God. And
Wow.
as I thought about it, and I thought about turning that story into a feature film, I thought how interesting it would be, instead of taking that feature film, that short film, and stretching it across 2 hours.
Mm.
What if I just took that short film as a launching and I continued the story for another hour and a half?
Wow,
And
okay.
so, what happens to a guy who's had this incredible manifestation of God's reality?
Hmm.
What does he do after that? And I realized, you know what? That's where the story of Job starts.
Wow,
Job
that's
starts as
true.
a believer. He starts as somebody who knows God already,
Right.
and then all the junk happens to him. And so
Dang, that's
that's
awesome.
what you'll see in this movie, is that Kevin gets to a point where he knows God's real, and then God says, "I'm out." And well, really,
Yeah, I
but
get. You're
that's
right.
how it seems. That's how it seems to Kevin.
Yeah.
And the devil is able to come after him. And so,
Dang.
and Job is just, it's a fascinating story, isn't it? It's one that we
It is
all
very.
wonder about. And, what is the lesson of Job? Is it that God is a jerk, or is it, or is there something deeper going on? And I think the film is something to say about it. And yeah, there's definitely something deeper than God
Yeah.
is a jerk. God is not a jerk. That is
Right.
not the lesson of Job. But some people, that's how they see it. That's what they take away. And so I
Wow.
think those people especially are going to have something to chew on with this movie.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I am interested. How did you become a believer? How did
So
you?
for me, yeah, I was raised in a family in which both of my parents instilled faith in us as kids.
Oh, that's good.
My father was somebody who came to religion kind of later in life,
Okay.
or rather, in his early 20s. He didn't really grow up with it too much.
Yeah.
But from the time, yeah, I was a kid, it was instilled in me. But even so, when I became a teenager, I went through a period, like I think a lot of us do, where we question
Yes.
this church that we've been raised in. We
Right.
question the reality of God.
Right.
And so I went on a multi-year journey where I really dug deep, and I found out for myself that, yeah, you know what, I do have a savior, and he
Wow.
lives, and I've been firm in that ever since.
That's awesome. Wow. So you went in your own journey, explored, probably you looked up different religions, and you probably, I don't know, I
Sure.
mean, you just said, okay, you know what? Everything led to the source of God being the only one. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely.
Very awesome.
Absolutely.
So I gotta say, I did read a bit of what happened with your father, and I gotta say that I'm so sorry about that. That just I lost my mother to cancer 2 years ago, and I can't
Oh my
relate to
gosh,
the
I'm so
fact of what.
sorry.
Yeah, thank you, but I can't relate to the fact of what happened to your dad. I mean, that's just tragic, but just the fact that losing a parent is just it's devastating, you know. And I mean, even till now,
It
after
is.
2 years, I'm still asking God to help me through it because I mean, I was my mom was the closest thing to me, you know. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to, ask you like during that, like what happened with your dad, if you don't mind sharing a bit to the viewers, and
Yeah,
then
of
just how
course.
you're handling that.
So, I mean, my dad, he died a number of years ago.
Hmm.
Gosh, it's been 27 years
Oh, it has been
since he
27
passed.
years. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been quite a while. So a little bit longer for me, but it doesn't feel like 27 years ago.
Mhm.
I mean,
Right.
the when you lose someone that's that close and that important to you, it's
Yeah.
always a little bit of a fresh wound,
Yes.
as I'm sure you already know.
Yes.
Um, but my father, he was shot in an armed robbery when I
Hmm.
was 12 years old. He was shot 13 times and
Wow.
he lived.
Yeah.
He didn't actually
Mhm.
die. But then 8 years later, when I was 19, he he was shot again in a second armed robbery, and that time he did die.
Yeah.
And it was a profoundly dark moment of my life, as you can
Hmm.
imagine.
Yeah.
Finding out that he had died, finding out that two men had killed him, that it wasn't
Hmm.
an accident. They came
Hmm.
in, they wanted to murder him, and they did.
Hmm.
But I had a couple of things going for me in that moment. I had the example of my father from 8 years previous, when he forgave the men that shot him the first time, and he did not live a life of bitterness towards them or towards God. And I also had a knowledge of my Savior, and what that did for me in that moment is that I had this dark night of finding out that he was dead, and knowing that someone had done it to him, and feeling that anger well up inside me towards them.
Hmm.
But almost as quickly as it came, it left. it
Wow.
just it just it just completely left, and it was replaced by empathy and even love for the men who had killed him. And the reason for that is this: it's because what they had done to my father
Hmm.
was not as bad. Killing him, taking his mortal life, was not as bad as what they had done to themselves. Because
True.
I have an understanding of the soul, I have an understanding of sin, and that
Hmm.
understanding tells me that we don't do the harmful things that we do, the sins that we commit.
Hmm.
We have to reckon with them one way or another. We have to come to an understanding of what we have done, and we have to either repent or suffer for it. But either
Yes.
way, there is a suffering that happens
Right.
when we realize our guilt.
Right.
And I realized that those guys, probably that night, they probably had no regrets, probably had no conception of what they
Right.
did.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Right. Right.
But whether in this life or the next, there would be a reckoning.
Yes.
And understanding that they were children of God too, who probably had a lot of the same hopes and dreams that I did, but at some point they went astray, that they
Hmm.
would realize what they had done at some point. I mean, I can't imagine the kind of pain that they will eventually have to go through
Yeah.
when they realize what they've done. And so, realizing that they're not all that different from me,
Mhm.
I forgave
Wow, that's
that
incredible.
night, and that forgiveness, that love, that empathy has remained with me all these 27 years. I've never once felt a moment of
Wow.
anger towards those guys ever since. And I
Wow.
attribute that entirely to the love that God has for each one of us. I feel like I got a
That's
glimpse of
awesome.
that. I got a glimpse
Yeah.
of the love that he has for them. I was able to tap into that. And that is a light that entered my life. Now
Wow.
that's not a light that would have entered my life
Mhm.
without that darkness,
Mm.
without going through what I did that night.
Mhm.
I would not have understood that light. I would not have perceived that. And to
Dang.
me, that leads directly into the shift. A lot
Yeah.
of what the shift is saying is that there
Mhm.
is a purpose to the suffering. There is a
Mhm.
purpose to the darkness that we pass through. And it is
Mhm.
so we can partake of the light more fully, because we
Wow.
really understand things in contrast, don't we?
Mhm.
It's the opposites. I understand goodness because I know what evil is. I understand bitter because I know what sweet is.
Mhm.
And so these things that we pass through that are terrible, they really are a blessing for us. They
Wow.
really, really are.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. And that's the thing is God, we don't understand sometimes what God does in doing what he does, but just like you mentioned,
Mhm.
he had to take you through a place that he says, I'm going to be with you through the deep waters. And just know
Yeah,
you're going to, once you come out, you're going to see a different light that you've never experienced before. And that right
yeah,
there just
exactly.
shows like, what I mean, that's incredible. Wow. And I'm so glad that you don't even experience that hatefulness, bitterness, anything like that. That just
No,
shows God carried you through it, holding you all
yeah,
the way through, saying, once you come out, I'm still with you. Just like he told
right.
Moses, I will always be with you. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So the actors that you have in this film, Christopher Poloha, as correct?
Palaha, uh-huh.
Pahala, sorry. How did you come across him to be the main actor on this?
So the search for Kevin was not an easy one, and it's a very demanding role.
Mm,
We shot 200 scenes in 25 days, and Kevin is in
wow.
pretty much every single one of them.
Yeah.
And he's doing stuff like running, getting beat up, and all this stuff. And it was trying to find the right actor, trying to find the guy who could really embody what I think is kind of a Jimmy Stewart like role, where he's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
everyman, but he's also got to play the romance, and he's got to
Right,
play
right.
the fear, and all these things that Jimmy Stewart was so great at, and finding just the right actor for that. Christopher was somebody whose work I was familiar with from shows like Mad Men and
Oh,
Jurassic
okay.
World Dominion and Wonder Woman 1984. I had
Nice.
seen
Okay.
him in these things, but I hadn't really realized the scope of what he was capable of. And once I investigated his work, I realized, oh my gosh, this is
This is the guy.
here is a gem of an actor who people should be more aware of. And immediately, once I understood that, we reached out to him, and he accepted the role, thankfully. And we were off to the races. And honestly, I couldn't ask for a better partner than Chris in this film. He threw his whole body and soul into it. He told me day one, kill me. He said, put me through it.
Wow.
Like whatever you got to do to me, let's just go for it.
That's amazing.
And you see it in his performance. You do. He
Yeah, I
gave
do.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible actor and good choice in having him in this film. I totally agree. He played a part that just really was just so believable. I love his just expression. Of course, during the action scenes, you're just like, dang, like this guy really knows how to put up with it. It's awesome. Yeah. And it's funny
Yeah.
you referenced Jimmy Stewart because this film, I guess a little bit of the story, like you mentioned, it's based on Job or sorry, yours, but
Mhm.
also It's a Wonderful Life. You know what I mean? Kind of like losing
Yeah.
wife, trying to figure it out, like everything changed. So I was like, I love that movie, by the way. It's a Wonderful Life. It's an incredible
Oh,
story.
it's one of the greatest films of all time. And
Oh,
and
yes.
it's funny because as the movie has been getting out there, a lot of people have been making the It's a Wonderful Life comparison. And I'll be honest, I never once thought about It's a Wonderful Life, but getting that vibe from it. And it's fascinating to me because
Yeah.
it was totally unintended, but I kind of see it. I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. And that's a huge compliment. I mean, that's
Yeah.
one of the best movies of all time. It
It
really is.
is. Do you think, little aside from the shift, do you think there will ever be a remake of It's a Wonderful Life?
Oh gosh, I sure hope not. No one should touch that movie.
Right. I know, but these days people just remake movies out of nowhere. You're like, wow, okay.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But
Yeah.
that would be a bad one to remake. People,
Yeah.
we're still watching it all these years
Oh,
later.
of
You know, it,
course.
it
Yeah.
captures new generations. It's like remaking Back to the Future. That's
Yes,
another one
that's
of
what I was
those that
gonna
I hope
say.
they never remake that movie because
Yes,
there's no way you're gonna recapture that. There's no
exactly.
way.
Yeah.
Neil McDonough
Yeah.
plays our bad guy, the benefactor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What made you choose him? And
Well, I mean, look, there's no better villain in Hollywood than Neil McDonough. You know,
he does play a good part, yeah.
he knows how to play the bad guy, and he is also someone who has a deep Christian faith, who just is everything he does is for
That's
the
awesome.
Lord.
Wow. Okay.
And he honestly, when he initially read the script for this film, he said his first response immediately was, no way. I've played a lot of bad guys, but I'm not going that dark. I'm not playing the
Whoa,
devil.
is what he said.
That was what he said. And he told his wife that, and his wife read the script, and she turned around on him and said, Neil, you have to play this part. She
Wow.
said, anybody else who plays this part, anybody they get, they're not going to be able to do what you can do with this film, because not only are you the best bad guy in Hollywood, which I agree with Rube, his wife,
Okay.
on that.
Yeah.
Not only are you that, but you have a faith and you understand this role in a way that no other actor is going to understand. And genuinely, you see that in the film. He plays, you look, I know the devil or Satan, whatever, has appeared in a lot of movies, and you've seen that many times. You've never seen it like this.
Wow.
Neil brought a humanity and an understanding to this role that is so unexpected and so interesting and so much more nuanced than you've ever seen the devil portrayed before.
Yeah.
And it is so impactful. I cannot wait for people to see this. I believe, I mean, look, I'm very, very biased, but for me, it's his best performance ever. I absolutely love him in this movie.
That's awesome. Wow. And I got to say, the first hour watching it, yeah, he really does play just the devil, right? He's playing the devil. So I was like, dang, that's really a different version of a devil I've never seen, but it's great. It's good. You know what I mean? It interests you. You're like, whoa, if the devil was really like this, it could just be like this in real life. You know what I mean? So
right. And he doesn't call himself the devil. He calls
right,
himself the benefactor,
right.
Which is our signal to the audience of, hey, this is a different take.
Yeah.
It's a different take. And when you see the film, you understand why he's called the benefactor. It'll make sense. But if anybody is thinking this is a typical man versus devil story, I promise you it's not.
Right. No, I agree. So with this film, sir, what do you plan on doing after the film? Is there another project in the works, or you plan on just letting this grow to nationwide out of the countries? What do you plan on doing with the shift?
Yeah, I mean, it is being released nationwide on Friday. We're in 2,500 screens currently,
awesome.
which
Congrats.
is a giant wide release,
yes.
which I'm very, very grateful for that.
Yeah.
Hoping for success. If it's successful, then I get to tell more stories. And I've already got my next script written. I'm ready to go.
All right.
I want to stay in the sci-fi space. I think there's more to say, and I'm excited to do it.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. That's amazing. I can't wait to go tomorrow night. We already have our tickets.
Awesome.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Kind of going back to you being a filmmaker, what is a film that, as you growing up, got you interested in film? I mean, there hasn't been that point where, like, that for me, it was Back to the Future. Like, as a kid, I watched it and I'm like, I would love to make a film like this or make something similar that has that.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, Back to the Future is one of those seminal moments, I think, for a lot of us. I was 8 years old when that came out.
Okay.
And that hit hard. I mean, I remember my dad coming home one night and he's like, Brock, you got to see this movie with me. And then he told me the title and I'm like, I don't even understand what you just said. Back to the Future? That makes no sense.
Oh, that's funny.
But then he took me and I saw it, and it was just, I mean, absolutely one of my favorite movies. Science fiction is my favorite genre. Another one of my favorites is Gattaca, which is a movie not everyone has seen. It's a fantastic movie with Ethan Hawke and Jude Law and Uma Thurman. I think that was probably the movie that that kind of like sparked the storytelling bug for me.
Okay.
Where I could just see how well structured that story was. And when but becoming a filmmaker and all of that really, really didn't become a consideration until about 9 years ago.
Wow.
So, I came into this as a lover of film, but never imagined that I would get into this. Not until I was forced to.
Dang.
Not until we
Right.
lost our jobs and I didn't know what else to do.
That's awesome. You know, and that's the thing is like there's a lot of people out there that have dreams that God puts in them and they have ideas and all that. But just for you to go through this and saying, hey, if I can do it, you guys can do it too. Because if you
Yeah,
have God with you, nothing's impossible. Just you got to take that leap of faith, take action,
absolutely.
and everything else will come through with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, that's it. I would have look. I've tried a lot of different things. We all try different
Yeah.
things, and
Yeah.
we usually fail. Failure
Yeah.
is most of what we experience. This was the thing where I knew no matter how many setbacks I had,
Mhm.
that it was the right path because he was sustaining me. He was making it very clear to me, no, you got to keep with this one because it
Dang.
will pay off eventually. And look, it took a lot longer than I thought it would. It really did. But I'm so grateful that he gave me that inspiration, and I'm so
Yes.
grateful I
Yes.
stuck with it.
Awesome. Brock, I do want to ask you, do you ever thought about writing a book, your own book, autobiography on just the
Um,
story and everything?
I did. It's called The Other Side of Fear, a
Oh,
true
you did write a
story.
book?
Yeah, a true coming of age story of murder, forgiveness, and I got my own subtitle wrong. But anyway, the story of my father. I actually wrote
Oh,
that
okay.
as a memoir. It's called The Other Side of Fear. You can find it on Amazon and all that. So
Okay.
yeah,
And
I
it
did. I
also
wrote a
talks
book.
oh, awesome. And it does talk about like you becoming a filmmaker and that as well, going that journey.
No, because I wrote all of it. I wrote the whole thing before I even
Oh,
embarked
before
on that
it.
journey.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So it basically it takes place between the time I was 12 and the time I was 19, and which are very seminal years. You know, those are the
Yeah.
years when you really become a person. And those 8 years, those were the extra years that I got
Wow.
with my father, you know, between his two shootings. So
Mhm.
the whole story is kind of bookended by the two shootings, and
Wow.
just deals with everything that I've talked about, the experience that I had of coming to forgiveness and all of that.
Wow. I'll definitely purchase a book on on Amazon, right? You said it's on Amazon?
Amazon, yeah,
Okay,
real easy to
yeah.
find.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
definitely look that up. Before we come to an end on this podcast, I really do appreciate you, Brock, for coming on. For those viewers that really don't know much about God, there might be some that just are looking for that light. Would you like to share something real quick just about just how to find that light in God or what you need? You know what I mean? Just to share a little bit.
yeah, for sure. No, look, I've passed through it. You know, with
Mhm.
my father, with the job loss, something. My middle daughter has some severe disabilities, and
Oh, she does. Okay.
up until just a little while ago, for the first 18 years of her life, we didn't have a diagnosis for that. And so it's one thing to say that we have trials in life. It's another thing to
Mm,
realize that sometimes people are saddled with trials that are very, very long.
mm,
And I think my heart especially goes out to people like that because I know what that feels like. And there's people who deal, and I'm talking about people who deal with things like chronic illness
mm,
and children who go astray and debilitating addictions that they just can't shake.
mm,
You know, my heart really goes out to people who are struggling through something for years. And
mm.
I think there's a lot of us out there kind of suffering silently. I know when
Yes.
with some of these things, I've suffered silently for a long time. And I think the thing that I would love to say to them is that even right now, even though it may not seem like it, God is very much there. And if
Mm,
you reach out for him, and if you look around you, there's a lot more light going on. There's a lot more, even in this dark world that we live in,
yeah, exactly.
there is light and there's beauty and there's hope. Um, and I know that sometimes it's hard to see that. But I also believe that the words faith
Hmm.
and patience,
Hmm.
I've actually come to believe that they're almost synonymous.
Hmm.
I think faith is defined by patience. So stick it out. Whatever you're going through, stick it out because I promise you,
Wow.
I don't know how long it's going to take, but I promise you,
Yeah.
God is going to show up.
Yep. I totally agree, Brock. Thank you so much for sharing those wise words. Just everything was, oh my God, thank you. You know, and that's the thing around this time too, for the holidays, there's always those that have lost loved ones, have lost
Mhm.
jobs, like, you know, and so yeah, they are going through some of them are going through a dark time or just having family in hospitals, just and so sharing that, just yeah, just keep trusting God. He will come through, he will show up.
Absolutely.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Brock. Congratulations again on the release of The Ship
Thanks.
tomorrow. I am so looking forward to seeing the ending of
Yeah.
it. But I,
Yeah.
and it just inspires me because my brother does short films as well in California, and I would love to be just his shadow in doing that as well. But just to know that God just said, "Hey, if I have a plan for you, just trust me, and I'm gonna take you there." And knowing what
Right.
you're doing with these incredible actors, it's like, well, then God, like, what plan do you have for me for that? Because I would love to do that.
Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you never know. You never know. I never would have imagined this, but here I am.
And here
So
you are.
extremely grateful. Extremely grateful.
Awesome. Awesome, Brock. Well, I look forward to your next project that you're gonna be working on because you say you finished the script. So
Yes. Yep.
let's
I'm
see
ready to
what
go.
awesome. Let's see what's in the future in the making on that. Well, thank you
Yeah.
everyone for watching Rhythm and Roads. I'm your host, Joshua Jacob, with our special guest, Brock Heasley, for the release of The Shift tomorrow, nationwide, December 1st. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you on the next episode.
The people here have no hope.
You still looking for that wife of yours? You're clinging to scraps of rumors.
And then he arrived.